Gene Hackman has passed away, but the silence that followed was more terrifying than any horror movie Hollywood has ever made. No screams, no signs of resistance, no surviving witnesses, except for 3 four-legged creatures who saw everything with their own eyes: Bear, Nikita, and Zena. They can't speak, but they know fear. Fear etched into every rapid breath, every startle in the night, every mournful howl echoing from the dark corner of the house. Of those, only Bear and Nikita survived, but their eyes from that day on were no longer those of carefree dogs. Police searched for signs of intruders, physical evidence, leftover DNA. But the biggest piece of evidence may never be examined, lying in the vivid memories and wild instincts of the forgotten dogs. They saw. They heard. They smelled the scent of death lurking in Gene Hackman's house. Chapter 1. The Silent Witnesses in the Hallway. 2 small shadows silently imprinted on the hallway tiles. One ash gray with a hint of light brown, one jet black like burnt coffee beans. Bear and Nikita, the 2 dogs who survived in the house where Jean Hackman and Betsy Arakawa passed away, now became the only silent witnesses, those who held the answers to the series of mysteries that still shrouded the Santa Fe villa. From the moment the investigation team stepped through the main entrance, those 2 small creatures were there, huddled together, their eyes reflecting the flashing flashlight beams of the police. No barking, no growling, just silence. An unusual silence in dogs known for being as loyal and vigilant as Bear and Nikita. It wasn't ordinary panic or fear. It was the kind of silence as if they both understood that their companions could no longer pet them. Bear, the little dog Gene Hackman proudly called my shadow, always followed him from the living room to the backyard, from the study to the second-floor bedroom. "This little guy knows me better than I know myself," Hackman once laughed when sharing about Bear in his last media interview a few years ago. In his final days, Bear still followed Hackman's every step, even when his health had declined significantly. His aching knees made every step an ordeal. Perhaps if anyone knew what happened in that house, Bear was the only creature alive to witness it all. Nikita, younger and more active than Bear, was the dog Betsy Arakawa adopted after Gene Hackman was discharged from the hospital in 2020 due to a mild stroke. She said he needed a friend that could run, Gene Hackman joked in a private recording that was never released. Nikita quickly became a bridge between the couple, an old, slow man, and a woman who still retained some youthful energy. But what Nikita saw on the last night, the scene that filled the house with deadly silence, will probably remain a mystery behind its dark eyes. Santa Fe investigators initially focused on examining the bodies, the scene, and clear physical evidence. But it was an animal rescuer, who was called to take Bear and Nikita out, who mentioned an unusual detail. "They didn't bark when we came in," she said. "Usually dogs in a situation like this would be frantic, confused, or even aggressive. But they just sat there like they knew." The survival instinct of dogs, especially those deeply attached to their owners, makes them sensitive to every movement, every smallest sound in the house. If someone unfamiliar had broken in, if there had been any unusual noise, they would have reacted. But no signs of struggle or resistance, no scratches on the door, no bite marks on anything. Bear and Nikita just sat there, like 2 living tombstones that recorded what humans could not see. An animal behavior expert, who was invited to assess the dog's psychological state, commented, "They've been grieving, not just confused or scared, but truly grieving." Bear and Nikita's silence was the silence of awareness that the people they loved most were gone. But how did they know? How did 2 creatures only familiar with petting and scraps of food understand death? Gene Hackman once believed that animals, especially dogs, had a 6th sense, the ability to perceive things that humans were blind to. In a handwritten letter to a close friend in Montana, he wrote, "Bear always knows when I'm not feeling well. Sometimes I think he knows before I do." Did Bear sense something was wrong before anything happened? Did those brown eyes see what the investigators could never reconstruct? Bear and Nikita, two silent witnesses, two souls standing quietly between the past and the present. And perhaps in his last breaths, Gene Hackman knew those eyes would be the only gateway to the final truth of his life. Chapter 2, Zena, the loyal shadow who died with secrets. Zena was not just a dog to Betsy Arakawa. Zena was the living presence of love, comfort, and a kindred spirit. Gene Hackman once joked, "I might be her husband, but Zena's her soulmate." For many years, the image of Betsy walking around the garden or standing silently by the living room window always had Zena close by, like a breathing, loving, and fearful shadow. When the investigation team entered the Santa Fe villa on that fateful day, one detail made everyone stop. Zena lay motionless inside a tiny kennel, pushed into the darkest corner of the bathroom closet. No one knew who had placed the kennel there. Those closest to them confirmed. Zena had never slept in the bathroom closet. It had never been where Betsy placed Zena's kennel or bed. The Kelpie mix, who loved to run and preferred open spaces, always demanded to lie at Betsy's feet whenever she read or watched movies. Zena had passed away, her eyes wide open, cloudy, but still reflecting something like horror, like clinging. The examination found no clear signs of injury, no bruises, no signs of strangulation, no poison in the digestive system. Her heart stopped, simply that. But how could the strong heart of a dog, as energetic as Zena, quietly stop right next to Betsy, right in that strange dark corner? The answer may lie in the final hours, the gaps that no one except Zena witnessed. The next-door neighbor, Mrs. Mary Keller, recalled that evening. "I saw Betsy through the kitchen window. She was brushing Zena's fur on the porch. They looked peaceful. It was around 7 p.m. Just a few hours later, everything had changed forever, and Zena, from a creature full of life, fell right next to the woman who had raised her since she was a trembling puppy in a wicker basket." There was a small detail almost overlooked in the initial report. The bathroom closet door where Zena was found had a faint scratch, exactly small scratch marks, arranged in a uniform curve, as if Zena had tried to use her claws to open the door from the inside. But why would Betsy, who loved Zena like a child, put her in such a confined space? Or did someone else, another hand, lock Zena in there when things started to get out of control? A few weeks before the incident, Gene Hackman emailed an old friend in Florida, in which he wrote, "Zena's been acting strange lately. She's been following Betsy into every room, even the bathroom. It's like she knows something's wrong." What made that loyal dog so vigilant? Animals always have a sixth sense, a sense of danger before it appears. But Zena didn't bark, didn't bite, didn't resist. That loyal dog chose to stay with Betsy no matter what came. Some say Zena died of fear. The overwhelming fear exhausted her little heart. There is also a theory that Zena witnessed something so horrific that she couldn't bear it. But a creature born to protect like a Kelpie, why would she be silent in the face of danger? Was it the familiarity of the danger that confused Zena, making her unable to distinguish between owner and threat? Chapter 3, Misidentified Corpse. A Dog or a Key to the Mystery. It all started with a cold note in the preliminary report. Deceased, 1 brown shepherd dog. A dry line, seemingly just a minor detail among the documents about the scene, where Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were found in the stifling Santa Fe night. But that seemingly harmless note opened a serious gap in the entire investigation process. The brown shepherd dog that the examination team mentioned was actually Zena, the Kelpie mix who had been with Betsy for nearly a decade. At first glance, it might seem like a small mistake, a consequence of the investigation work in a stressful situation. But to those familiar with Hackman and Betsy, that mistake was suspicious, because it was no coincidence that Zena was the only creature who passed away in that house that day. The other 2 dogs, Bear and Nikita, survived. even though they shared the same space and time with Jean, Betsy, and Zena in the final hours. Zena was not just a pet. That Kelpie was almost trained by Gene Hackman's own harsh habits, the man who played generals, sheriffs, and the most stubborn survivors on screen. "A good dog reads the room better than any man," Gene once said in an interview. And Zena, according to many of Hackman's friends, was the only creature in the house who could sense every smallest vibration from the old owner. The misidentification of Zena was not just a professional error. It turned the entire initial evidence collection process into a mess. No one actually examined Zena's body with a full necropsy, which should have been mandatory when any creature died at a suspicious scene. No tissue samples, no toxicology tests, no nervous system analysis. Zena disappeared from the investigation like a wind, leaving only a small scratch on the bathroom closet door where she was found curled up as if trying to shrink from some terrible fear. Why did Zena pass away while Bear and Nikita survived? That was the question that puzzled the most seasoned investigators. The other two dogs showed no signs of abnormality. They were not panicked, did not bark wildly when the forensic team entered. Only Zena, the most loyal, most sensitive dog, quietly fell right next to Betsy, the woman she considered her whole world. There is a theory, crazy but impossible to ignore, that Zena saw something, a presence, an action, a sound beyond the ability to survive. The Kelpie's reaction was not to attack or bark an alarm, but to run away, to shrink into the darkest corner of the house that was once her home. Was it someone or something so familiar that Zena was confused, not knowing whether to protect or avoid? The fact that Zena was not autopsied is an unacceptable gap in the investigation process. Any good veterinarian knows that the abnormal death of a pet in a serious incident always contains unexpected clues. Zena might have inhaled something, toxic gas, spray, or simply an anesthetic intentionally used to control the animals in the house. But no test samples were kept, no records noted any signs of pathology. Zena disappeared from the story in the most perfect way for anyone who wanted to erase traces. In the investigation world, there is an unwritten rule. A dead dog in a crime scene speaks louder than a witness. Ah! But in Santa Fe, that voice was stifled from the first minute, when Zena was mistaken for an anonymous brown shepherd. That mistake was not just a technical error, but could be the door to a deliberate cover-up conspiracy. Because sometimes secrets do not lie in human testimony, but in the last eyes that closed, carrying what no one dared to mention. Chapter 4. Dogs Remember Everything. Bear and Nikita, two small creatures, seemingly just silent pieces, in the tragic story in Santa Fe, turned out to carry memories that could change the entire course of the investigation. When the forensic team and police first entered the house where Jean Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were found, they only saw two furry shadows huddled in the corner of the living room. No frantic barking, no warning growls, just absolute silence. A silence frozen in the stifling air of an unusual desert night. Bear, the golden retriever who had been with Gene Hackman for over 8 years, and Nikita, the small border collie that Betsy Arakawa cherished like a child, both survived strangely. The house showed no signs of forced entry, no obvious violence. So why did two creatures so sensitive to the environment and human emotions choose to be silent? That was the question that led investigators and animal behaviorists to an important conclusion. Bear and Nikita could be the last living witnesses carrying unspoken memories of Jean and Betsy's final hours. Animal behaviorists have long asserted dogs not only remember events, but also remember the emotions and scents associated with those events. Their brains, though not operating on human logic, possess a primal intuition that is frightening. An unusual noise, a strange scent, or even a small change in their owner's breathing is enough to be etched into their subconscious. And according to initial reports, Bear and Nikita showed no signs of fear or stress when the investigation team approached, a sign that the two dogs did not consider these strangers a threat. This leads to the hypothesis: if a third party was present in those fateful hours, it was likely someone Bear and Nikita knew, someone who had been in and out of the house, fed them, and was trusted by Jean and Betsy. But that indifferent reaction was truly frightening, because if Bear and Nikita weren't afraid, what did that mean? That the person behind this tragedy was too familiar with the Hackman family's life, or that Bear and Nikita had been trained not to react to that person's presence. Bear and Nikita are currently under special care at the Santa Fe Tales Center, not just for health or psychological reasons after the shock. Experts are secretly monitoring every reaction, every glance, every smallest action of theirs when a new person enters the room. There is an anecdote that in the early days Bear was transferred to Santa Fe Tales, he growled for no reason when a maintenance worker walked through the backyard. The man was later confirmed to have worked in the Hackman area in 2023. Was that a coincidence? Nikita, unlike Bear, fell into an unusually quiet state. No more of the agile border collie running around the yard like in the videos Betsy posted. Nikita curled up in a corner, looking out the window, as if waiting for something, or someone. Veterinarians found Nikita's heart rate suddenly increased whenever a man in a hat entered the room, no matter who it was. That conditioned response usually only appears in dogs who have experienced a shock associated with a specific image. Because of these signs, animal behaviorists have collaborated with the investigation team to conduct a series of behavioral tests, from playing old voice recordings from the Hackman house for Bear and Nikita to recreating familiar movements like footsteps, the sound of a wooden door opening, or even the sound of wine glasses clinking, all to look for abnormal reactions. All notes are carefully recorded, like a psychological diary that the two dogs do not know they are writing. Dogs remember everything. That is not just a symbolic saying. For Bear and Nikita, the memory of that last night is still imprinted in every breath, every step, every haunting look. Only those memories cannot be told in words. They only appear through eyes that suddenly contract when they see a familiar figure or a very soft growl in the quiet night, like an accusation that is never spoken. Chapter 5. The Whispered Confessions. Joey Padilla, a man in his 50s with sunken eyes from night shifts at Santa Fe Tales, once said something that many investigators couldn't forget. Dogs don't lie. They remember, they react, and if you know how to listen, they confess. At the center of this story is Zena, the Kelpie mix with burnt brown fur and dark eyes, once Betsy Arakawa's loyal shadow. Zena was not just a dog. To Betsy, Zena was a protector, a companion, and a living radar more sensitive than any alarm system installed around the house where Gene Hackman and his wife lived. So, when Joey Padilla mentioned Zena's strange, defensive reactions months ago, people began to piece together things that no one had paid attention to before. According to Joey, whenever Betsy brought Zena to Santa Fe Tales for bathing or health checkups, Zena always behaved obediently and comfortably. But about 6 months before the tragedy, Zena began to change. Every time Betsy brought Zena to the center, Joey heard a small growl down the hallway. Her ears perked up, her body tensed as if ready to attack, and most strangely, it was when certain guests appeared. Familiar faces to the Hackman house, people who had come to maintain, repair, or deliver around the area. It wasn't just fear, it was defensive energy, like she had seen something she couldn't unsee, Joey emphasized, and that was what kept him awake many nights after hearing the news of Jean and Betsy's passing. What was etched in Zena's memory? Who, or what, made the loyal dog always in a state of extreme tension? The story became more chilling when Betsy, on several occasions, mentioned that Zena barked incessantly on moonless nights. Not the normal barking when there was a strange noise outside the door, but the kind of incessant barking. An alarm, urgent, as if trying to warn her owner of a potential danger. Some nights, Betsy had to take Zena around the house, turning on all the lights to reassure her, but Zena still scratched at the bathroom door, which later became the scene where Betsy was found. The small closet where Zena's kennel was placed inside the bathroom was once jokingly called Zena's safe haven by Betsy. No one knew why Zena chose that cramped little corner as her refuge in her final years. But later, when animal behavior experts analyzed it, they concluded that it was a sign of a special fear, a fear associated with space, scent, or memories that had occurred in that very place. The most terrifying theory that some investigators dared not speak aloud was, Zena did not die of natural causes. No one examined Zena's body, nor did anyone notice the signs of muscle stiffness or foam around the loyal dog's mouth. It all passed like a faint detail in the media storm about Gene Hackman, but to Joey Padilla, it never faded. He believed that Zena had witnessed something, a scene terrifying enough to completely destroy the balance of that once resilient dog. Zena was trying to tell us something, but we didn't know how to listen. Joey mumbled as he last visited the Hackman house to collect the remaining belongings of the two surviving dogs, Bear and Nikita. In the moment when the Santa Fe sunlight stretched through the window frame, Joey saw Bear standing silently in the living room, his ears slightly drooping, but not from fear. It was the posture of a dog who knew what had happened, but couldn't say it in words. Are Bear and Nikita holding the final pieces, memories locked in the canine mind? Memories that can never become official evidence, but if you know how to listen, every breath, every glance, every light scratch on the wooden floor can be whispered confessions from the other side. Confessions that had tried to sound out long before the tragedy occurred, but no one was patient enough to listen. Chapter 6, Beyond the Rainbow Bridge. What the Dogs Left Behind. The deaths of Jean Hackman and Betsy Arakawa quickly closed with a preliminary conclusion. A closed family tragedy. No signs of forced entry, no specific suspects. But beneath that perfect shell, the most fragile traces, from Zena's shed fur to Bear and Nikita's suspicious eyes, are telling a completely different story. Bear, the mature and calm mixed shepherd, used to be Gene Hackman's personal bodyguard. But now, when facing strangers, Bear can no longer maintain that calmness. Every small noise in the house makes his fur stand on end, his eyes constantly scanning the room as if looking for an invisible ghost. Bear doesn't bark randomly, but the low growls in his throat are like a warning that this house is not really peaceful. Nikita, smaller, more playful, used to snuggle up to Betsy Arakawa whenever she played the piano. But now Nikita hugs the wall whenever she hears music, and once she even scratched at the bathroom door, where Betsy and Zena were found, with an inexplicable obsession. A group of animal behavior experts in New Mexico is proposing a bold idea, using memory induction behavioral therapy to elicit the subconscious reactions of Bear and Nikita. By bringing them back to their old house or having them re-interact with people who used to come in and out of the Hackman house, from plumbers, delivery people, to close friends, it is hoped that the natural reactions of the two dogs can help determine who are they afraid of? Who do they recognize? Where in the house do they react most strongly? All those reactions, if fully recorded and scientifically analyzed, could become the first unspoken testimony in the history of investigating a case involving a Hollywood legend. Zena has passed away, but that doesn't mean Zena left nothing behind. The fur left on the bathroom floor, the scratch marks on the wooden door, even the tissue samples left in the kennel, all are biological traces that can tell Zena's final story. Why did Zena die while Bear and Nikita survived? What happened inside the closed bathroom? If Zena was really psychologically shocked, poisoned, or even killed to cover up clues, then that Kelpie's small body is the final biological archive of the horrific hours that no one ever heard. Perhaps Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa took their secrets to the grave. But that doesn't mean the secret will be buried forever. A new investigation, not about humans, but about four-legged witnesses, is being quietly conducted by behaviorists, animal forensics, and even spiritual experts in Santa Fe. The answer may never be completely complete, but with every anxious glance of Bear, every fearful hug of Nikita, and every small fur left by Zena, Jean Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's most loyal creatures, may be the keys to unlocking the final mystery.